The man in the mirror. His eyes suddenly turned into double pupils. His nails were also falling off. Did the man get bitten by a zombie? What exactly is going on? Without further ado, let's enter the movie. On a sunny afternoon, a small boat was washed up to the riverbank. The family camping on the grass immediately gathered around to observe. Little did they know, inside the boat lay a dead body. The body was mangled and covered in blood, with numerous wounds. Murders were rare in the small town, and this incident caused a commotion throughout the police station. The medical examiner hurriedly arrived at the scene. Having worked for decades, he had seen many corpses, but the one before him was exceptionally mutilated. It looked as if someone had driven a truck over it multiple times. Police Chief John speculated that it was the work of a wild animal, but the medical examiner carefully examined the wounds. He immediately ruled out this possibility, as the victim seemed to have been intentionally dismembered. Furthermore, he discovered something peculiar on one hand of the body. It had 7 fingers. There were also strange insects sticking to its abdomen. John took the small insects back to the police station. Police officer Chris organized and numbered the evidence from the boat. Through identification documents, they learned that the deceased's name was Parson, and he was a brilliant electromagnetic physicist. 1 year ago, Parson rented a small cabin in the woods near the town. Local residents reported that there are often screams coming from the cabin. John planned to visit the cabin to investigate, and he specifically asked his girlfriend Jennifer, who was familiar with the forest, to guide him. After agreeing on a departure time, John searched for Parson's information online. He discovered that Parson's 7-year-old daughter had gone missing a year ago, and there had been no news of her since then. In the afternoon, John, the medical examiner, and Jennifer got into the car together. They followed a small forest path and reached the riverbank. Carrying their luggage, the 3 of them rowed a boat further into the depths of the forest. On the way, Chris called them, informing them that she had found information about Parson's wife, Linda. She suffered from mental illness after her daughter went missing, and she spent 3 months in a mental hospital. During that time, she consistently claimed that her daughter's disappearance was related to her husband's experiment. John was about to inquire about the details. His phone suddenly lost signal. The small boat had reached near the cabin. John asked Jennifer and the medical examiner to wait in place. He went first to explore the way. Inside the house, the walls were peeling and dilapidated, and the entire place was filled with clutter. However, there were no safety hazards, so John called his companions to come inside. Jennifer had been to the cabin a year ago, and at that time, it was warmly decorated. No one expected it to deteriorate like this in just a year. Just then, the lights in the cabin suddenly turned on. Jennifer speculated that the power was coming from the basement. The 3 of them decided to go downstairs and investigate. Sure enough, there was a generator in the basement. A small cabin like this, why would it need such a large generator? There must be something fishy about it. Following a cable which is as thick as an arm, she crawled into a cupboard to investigate. She discovered that the cable led all the way to a room on the top floor. The 3 of them immediately went upstairs. Inside the room was a laboratory. Its walls were covered with drawings of human tissues, and wires intricately tangled on the ceiling. Just as they were fascinated by what they saw, the medical examiner was bitten by an unknown insect. He grumbled and returned to the first floor. Meanwhile, John tried to contact Chris, but his cell phone had very poor signal. Now it was getting late in the evening, so the 3 of them decided to stay overnight in the cabin. Unexpectedly, in the middle of the night, a ladder quietly appeared inside the house. Meanwhile, John was having a conversation with Jennifer, and they didn't hear the sound in the living room. On the other side, the medical examiner, who had been bitten by the insect, suddenly woke up. He left the bedroom with a vacant expression. John heard the medical examiner's voice, and immediately went with Jennifer to investigate. They discovered a woman holding a gun in the living room. John recognized her as Linda, Parson's wife. Linda came to the cabin to find her husband, and John had to inform her that Parson was dead. However, Linda expressed doubt about it. She believed that the body was not Parson's, because of the unstable power supply in the cabin. So Jennifer went alone to the basement to check the power supply. She knelt in front of the machine to repair it, unaware that a little girl was standing behind her. After working for a while, Jennifer realized she couldn't fix the machine. She wanted to go back and ask John for help, but when she turned around, the girl behind her disappeared as well. However, the doll she was holding fell to the ground. Meanwhile, John and Linda were still chatting. It seems that the medical examiner has been forgotten. Suddenly, strange noises came from outside the house. John hurriedly put on his coat and went out to investigate. but there was nothing in the yard. At this moment, Jennifer returned to the first floor. She suddenly felt the whole house shaking, and there seemed to be the voice of a little girl coming from the attic. The three of them quickly climbed up the ladder. They saw the medical examiner, who was trapped in a device shaped like a keyhole. John and Jennifer quickly carried him down. After regaining consciousness, the medical examiner had no memory of this incident. He didn't know why he went to the attic, and he had no idea how those instruments were activated. The medical examiner was mentally exhausted, and he just wanted to go back to his room and rest. Jennifer noticed that Linda was still in the attic, so she climbed up to find Linda. She saw Linda looking ahead with a sad expression. Jennifer was about to comfort her, but Linda suddenly grabbed the doll in Jennifer's hand. She asked Jennifer where she found it. It turned out that the doll belonged to Linda's daughter. For some reason, Linda believed that her daughter was not dead. Jennifer suspected that Linda was hiding something, so she asked Linda about the purpose of these machines. Linda explained that it was her husband's particle collider. It would accelerate particles through an electromagnetic field collision, and it would generate unimaginable speeds. However, Linda was not clear about the function of the collider. Then John called her to the laboratory. Linda was surprised to see the door open. When she came yesterday, the room was locked. Linda looked around at the drawings on the wall, and she couldn't understand why her husband, a physicist, would be involved in such research. Why did he have so many human body drawings? It was clearly not for work. Meanwhile, John found a laptop. He planned to take it back to the police station to unlock it. There might be some important clues inside the laptop. At that moment, Linda suddenly looked out the window. She saw a man emerging from the woods. She immediately ran downstairs to chase after him. John and Jennifer instinctively followed. They saw Linda approaching the mysterious man. She slapped him as soon as she reached him. Through their conversation, they learned that the mysterious man was Parson, since he didn't die. Who was the dismembered body on the ship? Parson had no idea about it. He only mentioned that his backpack was stolen, so his identification documents were on the ship. While they were sitting in the living room having a conversation, the medical examiner noticed that his nails started to fall off. The wounds from insect bites on his body started to fester, and 2 pupils appeared in his eyes. Jennifer noticed that the medical examiner was awake. She approached to check his physical condition. The medical examiner concealed the recent events, and he sent Jennifer away with a few words. The scene shifts back to the police station. Chris discovered that the insects in the glass jar had died, but inside the sealed jar, there was an identical insect that appeared. Meanwhile, Linda asked her husband if he had taken their daughter to the cabin. Otherwise, how could her doll be here? Parson was hesitating whether to speak or not. Unexpectedly, the medical examiner suddenly appeared. Parson noticed the wound on his face, and he instructed the medical examiner to rest for a while. The medical examiner returned to his room like a puppet. After Parson's words, Linda found it strange and decided to quietly go to the medical examiner's room. Linda saw the medical examiner convulsing on the bed, and she noticed that his forehead was burning hot, and his entire palm had undergone a mutation, with several extra fingers growing on it, which inevitably reminded her of the dismembered body with extra fingers on the ship. Linda hurriedly called John over, and Jennifer was startled by the medical examiner's palm. She quickly went to the riverside to prepare a small boat, as the medical examiner's mutation might be related to the attic collider. This matter is closely related to Parson. Linda's mind was filled with an uneasy speculation. Could her husband have experimented on their daughter? Meanwhile, Jennifer returned to the cabin, and said that the boat they took was missing. Parson nonchalantly remarked, "I told you things often go missing around here." John believed he was responsible for it, so he pressured Parson to reveal where he hid the boat. Of course, Parson adamantly denied it. Linda remembered there was a campground about a kilometer away from the cabin. John decided to go there himself to investigate, and he asked Jennifer to stay here. Unexpectedly, Parson suddenly harassed Jennifer, and John couldn't bear it. He fiercely punched Parson several times, and handcuffed Parson to the railing. John worried about Jennifer, so he decided to take Jennifer with him to the campground. They quickly found the smashed boat. They cautiously entered the cabin. The scene before their eyes was horrifying. The house was filled with shattered corpses, resembling the discarded husks of cicadas. Meanwhile, Chris kept dialing the phone. Chris finally managed to contact the medical examiner. She didn't know that he was in a confused state of mind, and she asked the medical examiner to tell John that the DNA test results of the bodies were out, and that one of the shattered corpses was Parson. The whole situation became even more bewildering. At this moment, Parson got rid of handcuffs and entered the bedroom, taking the medical examiner's phone with him. Meanwhile, Linda managed to open the computer with great difficulty. She clicked on the video on the desktop, and she discovered that her husband had deceived many people into the particle collider, and none of them returned. Then, Parson sat in front of the camera, and he began to narrate his experiment. It turned out that he was studying on biological replication technology. The machine in the attic is not a particle collider, but a particle replicator. It can replicate a living person, even copying their thoughts. After Parson finished speaking, he revealed his right hand, which was covered with deformed fingers. He had actually experimented on himself, which explains why there was a body of Parson on the boat. That body must be just a replica. As Parson thought the replicator was successful, he didn't expect that many samples, including the medical examiner, would undergo mutations, even when insects accidentally entered the replicator. These failed samples carried infectious properties, which is why the medical examiner's wound became necrotic, and the bodies at the campground were all victims. Linda turned off the computer, and she accidentally saw her daughter's photo on the wall. She tore down the messy drawings, and she noticed disgusting tissue stuck to the wall. Linda knew her suspicion was correct. Her husband had definitely tested the machine on their daughter. Just then, Parson appeared, and Linda demanded to know where their daughter was. Unexpectedly, he blocked the door with his hand, but Linda had a clever idea and crawled out through the fireplace. She grabbed an axe from the wall and headed towards the attic. To her surprise, their daughter emerged from the replicator, and under her temptation, Linda followed her into the machine. Meanwhile, John and Jennifer returned to the cabin, and they immediately noticed that Parson had escaped from the handcuffs. John asked Jennifer to wait outside the house, warning her not to enter without his signal. After saying that, John broke into the cabin. He heard strange noises coming from the bedroom, so he forcefully burst the door open. He witnessed the medical examiner's sternum expanding rapidly, and the medical examiner exploded right in front of John's eyes. Then, his skin slowly began to peel off, and the medical examiner turned into a completely failed mutant sample. John quickly broke through the door and rushed outside, but the medical examiner tackled him to the ground. Fortunately, Jennifer arrived just in time, and she killed the medical examiner with one shot. But more and more mutants are emerging. Jennifer was holding a gun guarding the door. She blocked the mutants who were like zombies. Meanwhile, John took gasoline to destroy the replicator, but suddenly Parson appeared, and he tackled John, biting off 2 of his fingers. John kicked the zombie away with one kick. There are too many mutants around Jennifer. She had to return to the cabin. As a result, she encountered the mutated Linda, and she had to shoot her. At that moment, John successfully ignited the replicator, and he urged Jennifer to escape quickly. However, he was caught by Parson. At the end of the story, only Jennifer survived. The movie ends here. In the final scene of the movie, the director pulls the camera back once again, and focuses on the burned bodies nearby. It is evident that Jennifer, who is still alive, has been infected. The crisis in the town is not resolved, and the whole movie feels a bit dragged out. The character is weak, and there are quite a few bloody and violent scenes in the movie. I do not recommend children to watch. If you enjoy my channel, please consider subscribing.